then a summer flow and an autumn waterway, full enough to our voyagers to paddle large canoes to the feast of the hunter's moon. The snowy winter of 2010 was followed by the rainy spring of 2011. The water rose. The gauge near the Brown Street overlook read 21 feet. 11 feet of muddy brown water above flood level. The banks overflowed. The tall trees of Tapawingo Park stood in water. The wooden picnic tables that were at their feet floated downstream, with all the other dead wood ripped from the riverbank. River Road was merely a river. I saw an elderly couple row their boat to a higher point in the road where they had parked their minivan. Their house was an island. The water receded in summer, rested at the footings of the bridges. A sandbar appeared. The river narrowed. Winter forgot us in 2011, and February 2012 was the beginning of a long, hot summer. The river shrank. At Mascoutin Landing, a sandbar extended 3/4 the width of the Wabash. The boat launch went down to nothing but sand. The water was 50 feet from the launch. And I could not put a full blade of my paddle in the water, even in the middle of the river. The depth was 0 feet and 10 inches. The river bank exposed tires that had been thrown into the stream years ago. Years of abuse were strewn across the exposed river bottom. The Wabash almost disappeared. August thunderstorms have extended its life a little. But what if the waters run dry? What if the Wabash dies? Enter the reign of a hurricane. Yesterday, parts of the Sagamore Parkway were flooded and it was closed down. But the hard rain soon stopped, and we did not get as much rain as we thought we were going to get. But the hurricanes and the rain represent the opposite extreme. Rising ocean temperatures produce larger, wetter hurricanes. Water is always on the move, and it's moving faster as the climate changes. Our agriculture is based on a certain equilibrium. Where we grow things depends on where the rain is predicted to be. Corn and soybean east of the 100th meridian, wheat to the west. For those who you think in football terms, the Big Ten is corn and soybeans. The Big 12 is wheat. For centuries, we have had more than 20 inches of rain in the east and less than 20 inches in the west, except for the Pacific coast in Northern California, Oregon, and Washington. And in the east, south of the 36th parallel, south of Virginia, Kentucky, and Missouri, they have averaged more than 40 inches. And there they grow rice and cotton. Because of the snow melt in the Sierra Nevada, the irrigated Sacramento Valley of California grows everything. They just use as much water as they need for whatever they're growing. But the snowpack is changing. North of the 40th parallel around San Francisco, it's declining. South, it appears to be growing. Climate change is happening, and the distribution of water is changing. On top of this, in our country, people have moved towards the more arid zones in the Southwest, increasing the decline in water that's available. The Colorado River no longer reaches the Gulf of California. People use it up before it does. And then in Nebraska, into Texas, the Ogala Aquifer, it's one of the world's largest aquifers, is being rapidly depleted by growing use and continued agricultural use. And that it is estimated that it recharges about only 10% of its annual withdrawals. And it's over this aquifer that there's a proposed pipeline of carrying tar sands oil, which is much thicker than other oil. When some leaked into the Kalamazoo River 3 years ago, it took 3 years for it to be deemed safe, and it's still not clean. It's just the tar sands are heavier than oil. It doesn't float on the top, it sinks to the bottom. And all over the world, we're having to fight over the right for water, as it's more and more becoming used as a utility. And the human right to water has been recognized in international treaties and national constitutions since 2002. However, this right is being eroded by the inclusion of water and other essential services as commodity in international trade treaties and conventions. UUSC, the UU Service Committee, works with partners and organizations to guarantee that the privatization of water does not threaten people's right and access to safe, affordable water. Think of it, if the Hoover Dam was privatized and that company got to decide who gets the water, and it's still, even under government control, it does decide, the golf courses get more than the people living in poverty. And this is particularly true in California. Arvid Straub, a UU minister who was in North Carolina when I was in North Carolina, but has since moved to San Diego, wrote in the San Diego paper recently, California's waters are increasingly stressed from climate change, overuse, and the contamination. While many of us take our water and food for granted, it is heartbreaking to see how many families, communities, and schools across California can no longer drink their toxic tap water. These families have had no choice but to buy expensive bottled water for everyday use. This on top of paying for the local water supply. A United Nations report that in some cases, California families are burdened with paying up to 20% of their monthly income for water and sanitation. Schools are forced to spend money that they could spend in classrooms on bottled water for students. The Unitarian Universalist Legislative Ministry of California is pleased to see the growing moral witness with regard to human right to water. A bill, AB 685, will put the human right to water in the California Water Code as a complement to environmental law. When I hear about the UN going in and evaluating the problems in a country, I very seldom think that that country that they're going to is the United States. But when you have the problems of class and the problems of unbridled growth in places that it can't be sustained, there is competition for water. And even in Indiana this summer, many people had their wells run dry. And thankfully, some of the farms, seeing that their corn crop was already mostly lost, stopped irrigating, and the aquifers came up a little bit. But this is a type of thing that is probably going to happen in this state and almost every state in the union where there's competition for water to run industry. We all need jobs. But sometimes, how is that water that industry uses, how is it returned to the system? In the case of hydraulic fracking, it's just poisoned and stored underwater, never underground, never to be used again, unless, of course, the pipes leak, as they often do, and it gets into your tap water so you can set your water on fire. We are in a smaller and smaller world. And we need to understand the water that we use is shared not just with our neighbor, but with the whole world. How we use our water, how we regulate the use of water by industry and agriculture has an effect. If Indiana no longer has enough rain to grow corn, perhaps we should grow wheat instead and not just continue to irrigate so we can grow corn because it's traditional. What they'll grow out in the Great Plains when it gets too dry to grow wheat, I don't know. But whatever we do, everything is political. Whether you have a lawn or not is political. Whether you water that lawn or not is political. How often you bathe, how often you wash your clothes, all of that is political. Because all that politics is just people trying to share the resources of the world. So I want you to think. Think of how you use water and how water is used in the production of the products that you make and use. But most of all, I think we are going to be best able to change our relationship to water and understand how holy and precious it is when we realize that we share it with the world. Later we will be doing our in-gathering water service. Before we do that, I want to invite you to close your eyes and listen to some of the places that our water that we are sharing today comes from, and some of the ideas and thoughts that people had regarding that water. We have water from the Grand Canyon. And think of the power that water has over time. Have tap water from Arizona. May justice flow like waters. There's beauty in the water from the Wisconsin Dells. At a pond at Cumberland Park, there is quiet contemplation. In Swiss rivers, peaceful, clear, serene. Niagara Falls inspires the immensity of the universe. The Wabash, peaceful and grateful to have it in our town. The Columbia River, spectacular gorge in nature. Cuyabeno and Amazon rivers, 18% of the earth's fresh water. West Lafayette water fed a container garden. The White River and hope for restoration. Lake Michigan, wells at Wheatland, hope, sustenance, relief, life. Loch Lomond in Scotland, beauty, vast, happiness, and gratitude. Wild beauty, danger waters. The Gulf of Mexico, peace and bounty. Of France Park Quarry, one with the fish. A pond in northeast Ohio, love and relaxation. Kalamazoo River, sad, 1 million gallons of tar sand crude in it. A baby pond, family. The Atlantic Ocean and a South Carolina marsh, peace and beauty. And the Atlantic in Florida, floating peace and cleansing. And the Wabash, have never seen such sandbars. Looks like we can walk across it. And the Atlantic Ocean, separating one from their birth family. This water is from all over the world. And the water that you take out of your tap today, at some point, has been all over the world. We travel and we see various bodies of water, and then we return here. And our water also travels. After we use it, hopefully it gets treated and it gets returned to the water cycle. We are connected. We are connected to the earth by our very bodies that need so much water. Let us be mindful of the water we need and not waste water that others need. The UU Service Committee encourages us to use an empty pitcher of water in our ceremony this year to represent all the people who do not have water.